I honestly don't know how they've got away with this. This thing is almost half the cost of the original Kyosho version. And yes, I am talking about the Kyosho Mini-Z. Now, clones in the RC hobby is something that we're all used to. It's nothing new, and we've seen it all before. And I know lots of people are against clones in the hobby because it takes away from the real brand. And a lot of clones out there tend to be worse quality. But the thing that makes clones so appealing is the price. And of course, people these days want to get a good deal. So this little 1/24 scale crawler only costs $100 compared to the original version, which costs over £200 here in the UK. So I can see why someone would buy one of these because it's less than half the price of the original. But quality wise, is this going to compare? Now, initial impressions, well, it does look like an exact replica of the Kyosho version for half the price. There are some very minor changes, but essentially it's the same truck. The Mini-Z cars do look incredibly cool, and of course Kyosho quality is great, but I do think they are insanely expensive for what they are. I know there's a massive community out there who love the Kyosho Mini-Z cars. I've never actually owned an original one myself because I could never justify the cost, although they do look fantastic. Now, I've owned lots of RC clones in the past. One of my current ones is the 30 Degrees North short course truck. That's obviously a clone of the Lancia 5T, and that thing is fantastic. Yes, it may be lacking a little bit of quality, but it's pretty much the same truck. And a lot of the Lancia parts actually fit the 30 Degrees North. Now, we've seen loads of clones in the RC hobby. One of the most famous ones is probably the WL Toys 144001. At one point, that was one of the best cheap RC buggies you could buy, and it was a perfect entry point into the hobby. But owners of the 144001 will 100% agree with me when I say the quality wasn't quite there. Whereas when you look at the LC Racing version, well, the quality was night and day. So in the box, of course, we have the little truck itself. We also get a black and white manual, and then the transmitter, and once again this is pretty much an exact copy of the original. On the side there we have our usual trim adjustments. You also get a foam grip on the wheel. This does feel kind of cheap, and I'm pretty sure the original Kyosho version actually feels a lot better. I forgot to say, it actually says Mini-Z on the box, but this is definitely not a Mini-Z box. And I'll stick a picture on the screen now to show you what the boxes usually look like. So Banggood reached out and asked me if I'd like to feature this on my channel. Of course, I did a search and I realised that this isn't actually a new product. It's newly listed on Banggood, but it's actually been around for about a year. There has been some coverage on this product, but not a huge amount, which is why I agreed to review it. It does look like we've got a couple of pins holding the body on, so let's remove those and let's take a look underneath. I do like the attention to detail on this little body, and like I said before, there are some very minor changes, but it's almost completely identical. So taking a closer look under the body, of course this thing has friction shocks. They don't actually feel too bad, and friction shocks are acceptable on small scale RC cars like this. And yeah, they don't actually feel too bad. So up on top there, that is where the AAA batteries go. This does have metal frame rails. Of course you do get a full size spare on the rear. The tyres actually feel nice and soft as well. So underneath we have a 4-link suspension setup, plastic drive shafts. Everything is pretty basic under here. Now electronics wise, this thing has a 2-in-1 ESC and receiver, and of course it does have a tiny little brushed motor. And I know this is a clone and they're obviously trying to replicate the original version, but I think I would have preferred to have seen a tiny little LiPo battery. I love how they've plastered Mini-Z everywhere. I've got some brand new batteries for this. Let's get these in and see how it performs. Right, so I've got the AAAs in. I'm just thinking to myself once again, imagine if this was the £200 Kyosho version. I don't think I'd be too happy about putting in some AAAs. Right, let's see how the steering servo performs. Wow, that's actually really quick. There's lots of travel as well. Yeah, that's cool. Let's see what the top speed's like. That's full throttle. There's no need to get the GPS out on this because it's not very quick. And there's no different speed settings. No high speed, low speed. It's just the one setting. Not bad for a 1/24 scale crawler. Right, let's see how it performs over here on the rocks. Low speed modulation's not great. And I know I'm testing this outside when in actual fact this is probably better off on an indoor track. But you may have noticed I do prefer being out and about on location to film my videos. So far this isn't too bad. It just feels a bit clunky. You can definitely tell it's a clone. I think I'm going to set up a little course in my garden and see how it handles it. Something a little bit more challenging with some of my obstacles. So next up, it's time to see how this truck performs on some of the obstacles in my garden. Now we're going to start with the first obstacle here. This is actually probably the most challenging one. The truck actually handles it quite well, although it does struggle because there's only so much travel on these 1/24 scale crawlers. So a couple of times it did actually topple over. I think we may be asking for just a little bit too much from this little crawler on this obstacle. Next up, this one's slightly less challenging. Now, the low speed modulation, like I said earlier in the video, isn't great. You do have to use quite a bit of the throttle to actually get the truck to move. So it does make interpreting your next move a little bit more difficult than usual. So moving on to the third one, of course this is going to be the easiest one here, and the truck handled it with ease. The fourth and final obstacle, again this is pretty easy for this little crawler, and it handled it with no issues whatsoever. Now these obstacles aren't cheap, they're actually pretty expensive, but if you're interested, I will leave a link down below. So overall, not a bad little crawler, perfect to have some fun out in your back garden, or on your desk, or on your homemade track. And for the price, I actually think it's worth the money. So there we go then guys, this is a great little crawler for the money. I mean, it's less than half the price of the Kyosho version. It's also the perfect way to have some crawling fun at home when you're on a limited budget. It may not be as capable as a 1/18 scale crawler, but it's still pretty good. Now another alternative would be to go for a cheap 1/18 scale crawler. Again, I have featured quite a few of those on the channel. I will leave some links in the description below. I actually think this little crawler is perfect if you just want to have some fun at home, maybe on your desk. I mean, it's so tiny, there's only so far you can go. But what I will say is the other cars in this price range don't look as cool as this. So let me know what you think of clones in the RC hobby. Do you agree with them or do you disagree? Drop a comment down below and let me know. Cheers for watching, see you on the next one, take care. If you enjoyed today's video and you want to see two really cool alternatives, click one of these videos now.